Jesus Christ was on a mission when he came to this earth. As a matter of fact, he tells us what his mission was. He said, I have come that you might have life and that you might have it more abundantly. You know, all of the high priests and all the different people that used to come to Jesus, they were always amazed by the answers that he would give when they asked him these tough questions. And the reason he always had the best answers is because he never answered a question that would benefit himself. He always answered his questions that were for God's purpose. Jesus Christ was on a mission. And I don't know about you, but I want to be a part of his mission. Ever since the day I've met Jesus Christ as my personal Savior, I've realized that I want to be a part of telling other people about that same Jesus. As a result, we at Upward Unlimited are on a mission. We're on a mission to introduce children to Jesus Christ by creating opportunities to serve them through sports. That's why we do what we do. And I just want to share with you, there is nothing in the world that we would like better than by the time that you leave here, for you to do Upward and for you to do Upward right. In the very beginning of this year, I talked with all the folks that are on our staff, and I said, every one of you that are involved with Upward, if there's anything in the world I'd love for our churches to do when they come and be a part of this, I would love for them to do Upward and to do Upward right. Because to do Upward right means to introduce children to Jesus Christ by creating opportunities to serve them through sports. Let me just share something with you. If you want to know whether or not you're doing Upward right or not, I'm just going to give you the final exam at the end of the year. After all this training is over and you go back and you raise up your leaders and you get your coaches and you get all your people together and you sign up all your kids and you have a wonderful season together and you have an awards night at the end and you get back home and you get done with your awards night and you sit back in your lazy chair and you go, wow, I wonder if we did that right. I just want you to look at these things right here. Are you upward? This is the only question you got to ask. 6 questions. Number 1, if you're upward, are you uplifting your league in prayer? Because I want to tell you something. That's one of the main things that we want to do at Upwards. We want to make the very foundation of who we are and what we do surrounded in prayer. Here's the next one. Are you presenting the gospel and the scripture? We're going to talk to you about how you go about doing that. If you're not doing that, it's not upward. The third thing is, are you wanting every single child to know Christ? In other words, are you opening the door to everybody? You're not going to separate out any person. Are you open the doors up to every single person in your community? Next, are you actively developing your leadership? You can't go out and try to train up people to do, or not train up people to do upward and expect them to do upward right. So we've got to train them up the right way. Are you reinforcing Christ as the character model for your coaches and your referees? That is vitally important. And the final thing, are you upward? Are you delivering a fun experience for every participant? Because I'm going to tell you something. You can do all those other things, and if it ain't no fun, I ain't coming back. I mean, it's got to be fun for these kids. So those are the things that we want to be sure to do. And the next thing is you want to be able to take our values, the values. We have several things that we value at Upward. And I want to share with you what those are real quickly. One of the very first values is the expectation of God moments. We believe that God is at work all around us. And that Bible verse that goes along with that is Ephesians 2:10. And Ephesians 2:10 says this, for we are God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God has planned in advance for us to do. You think about that just for a second. When we think about what it means for the expectation of God moments, there's a lot of things that go with that. The Experiencing God book that Henry Blackaby wrote several years ago has literally changed my life. In that Experiencing God book, he talks about the 7 realities of experiencing God. And the very first one is this, that God is at work all around us. Guess what? That doesn't mean anything as far as we're concerned. It doesn't matter whether we choose to believe it. Doesn't matter if we choose to be a part of it. Whether you're going to be involved in it or not, God is at work all around us. You can just count on that. So that's the first reality of experiencing God. The second thing is that God wants an intimate relationship with you and an intimate relationship with me. The God that's at work all around me wants an intimate relationship with me. That's incredible. And the next thing is that he wants you to be involved in what it is that he's doing. And then he wants to speak to you. And he says he's going to speak to you in a lot of different ways. He'll speak to you through music. He'll speak to you through your friends. He'll speak to you through your pastor. He'll speak to you through circumstances. But I'll promise you this, it will always be one of those things plus one. And the plus one will always be his word. I'm going to tell you something. If anytime you think God is speaking to you and it doesn't line up with his word, that ain't God. That was a bad taco from the night before or something. It will always be one of those things plus one. And when he speaks to us for several reasons. One is to reveal himself and to reveal his purposes and to reveal his ways. And when he reveals those things to him, then you know what to do, which leads you to a crisis of belief. And that crisis of belief is going to cause you to do some certain things. That's going to cause faith and action. You know, this is one of my favorite definitions of faith. I want you to hear this if you would. Faith is the belief in something that you cannot see is going to happen. You got that? It's the belief in something you cannot see is going to happen. Let me give you my definition of fear. This is it. It's the belief in something that you cannot see is going to happen. It's exactly the same thing. It's a choice. Are you going to choose faith or are you going to choose fear? And in order to experience God, we have to experience faith and action. Which leads us to a major adjustment in our life oftentimes. He says the sixth reality is that we have to make major adjustments in our life. And then finally, the final step of experiencing God is obedience. And you know, all too often we get on this circle of experiencing God, and every single one of us in this room are somewhere on that journey. We're either just now knowing that he's at work around us, or he's wanting that intimate relationship with you, or he's speaking to you, or he's inviting you to be a part of what he's doing, or you're at that crisis of belief, or maybe he's asking you to make a major adjustment in your life. But even if you're all the way there, he might be at the point where he's asking you to obey. And all too often we get right there and we go, ho, let's go back to, knowing you're at work all around me for a moment. I mean, it's just a scary thing to get to the point of obedience. But here's one of the things that Henry Blackaby says, and I cannot tell you how incredible this is. He says we'll never get the opportunity to see the evidence of our obedience until after we have obeyed. You don't get to see the evidence until after we've obeyed. Well, with that, we're going to go on to our next value. The next value is the life of integrity. We believe that how we live is more important than what we say. You know, there's an incredible Bible verse that says that in Galatians 2:20. It's one of my all-time favorites. This is what it says. For I have been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live, but it's Christ who lives in me. And the life which I now live, I live by faith in the Son of God that gave his life for me. You know, I get several things from that verse. Number one is this: I have been crucified with Christ. Think about that. I have been crucified with Christ. The Son of God gave his life for me. He did it all for me. It was all about me. He gave his life for me. It's all about me, and it's all about you. Isn't it great to know that when God sent his Son, Jesus Christ, it was all about you? Man, that's a good feeling. Then the second part of that verse, and the second thing I learned, kind of came out right after Rick Warren's book, The Purpose-Driven Life, where it says in the very first chapter, on the very first page, in the very first sentence, it goes like this: it's not about you anymore. And that's exactly what that verse says. I've been crucified with Christ, but it is no longer I who live. It's now Christ who lives in me. And you know, we have a value of integrity, the life of integrity. We understand that. Let me just play a quick game with you if I can to kind of illustrate this. I want everybody here to do me a favor. Take your right hand, put it right in front of you, just like that. I love this part. Some of y'all got this. Y'all pretty smart here in Tennessee. I understand that now. Okay, here we go. It's kind of a coordination game here. See if you can put your finger to your thumb, just like that. Oh, that's good. This might be. All right. Real slowly, pull it around just like this. Don't look at your hand. Look right up here at me. Look around. Everybody do this. Come on. Without looking at your hand, look right up here. Keep coming. See if you can put it around like that. Come on. I know it's been a long day. Here we go. See if you can put it right there on your chin. Now, I want you to look around all the people who think their chin's up here on the side of their face. Some of you still got it there. What? What'd he say? What? Why? I'm going to tell you, there's some people, I don't think I've ever in my life spoken anywhere when I didn't tell that one little illustration. I've seen people that have seen me do that 112 times. They're out there right now. They're going, I got it this time. I got it. Oh. Let me tell you why I love to share that. One of the reasons I love to share that is because people care a whole lot more about what you do than they do about what you say. Man, I'm telling you, we can talk until we're blue, but here's what's even more interesting about that. God cares more about who you are than he does about what you do. And when you begin to change who you are on the inside, it will change what you do, and people will realize that the things that you say are true. So we have a life of integrity. Our next value is this: The discipline of excellence. We believe in serving that exceeds your expectations, anybody's expectations. We're all about serving. I love this church right here, man. They're here to serve. You could tell that by the very shirts that they wear and the actions that they take on. They are here to serve. I'm grateful for that. And our final value is this: the priority of children. We believe that every child is a winner. I want to share with you a quick story, if I can, about an incredible vision that I heard not too long ago. In 1997, the president and CEO of the Coca-Cola Bottling Company stood up and he said, I want to speak to every single one of our employees across the country and around the world. Every single one, I want to talk to them at one time. I mean, via satellite, internet, whatever the case may be. And they set it up to where every employee would be awake around the world. And he stood before every one of his employees in 1997. And when finally he got the word, we're on in the United States, we're on in Hong Kong, we're on in South Africa, we're on all around the world. He said, okay, you're on, it's ready. And he stood up, and these are the words that he said. He said, 1 billion hours ago, mankind came into existence. 1 billion minutes ago, Christianity came into existence. 1 billion seconds ago, the Beatles sang on the Ed Sullivan Show. And 1 billion Coca-Colas ago was yesterday. And I'm telling you, every employee around the world, they went crazy. They were so excited because a long time ago, they had set out a vision to make 1 billion Coca-Colas in one day. And everybody was waiting for that moment. Employees had come and employees had gone, but they had a goal of making 1 billion Coca-Colas in a day. And I'm telling you, that kind of gets to me a little bit, that happened in one day. And after they finally got done hollering and screaming, let me just share something with you here. It is extremely dangerous to reach a vision. It's a dangerous place to be. I'm kind of reminded of that when I every time I get in a car, when I travel somewhere, every time I fly somewhere and I go somewhere I don't know where I'm going, I always go up to the Hertz rental car place and I say, I need one of those cars that's got that little thing in there that says it's a Hertz never lost. I need to be never lost because I'm forever lost. I'm always getting lost. I need one of those never lost things. And I got to tell you what I love about that never lost. I'm telling you what, you punch in the address, you punch in a hotel, a street address, whatever you want to be, and it'll tell you, turn right, turn left, go straight, 5 miles, take a right, take a left. And it's always this nice young lady talking to you so kind. Kind of reminds me of home. Would you please turn left, turn right? You know, it's the same thing at home. So anyway, explain that to you later. Anyway, it's this just nice lady telling me what to do. But here's the great thing. I can even be on the phone and miss my turn. And it'll say, renegotiating route. It's okay. We're going to go up, turn left, turn right. But here's the best part. I mean, you start sneaking up on where you're going to be. And you're just about to get to your destination, and you pull up right in front of that hotel, and then she says it. It's so great. It makes me feel great. This is what she does. She goes, you have arrived. Yes, I have. Man, doesn't it feel good for somebody to look at you and say, you have arrived? I mean, there is nothing better than feeling like you have arrived. I mean, that is a great feeling. Let me just tell you something. The truth of the matter is if we take on that kind of attitude in anything, that we have arrived, it is dangerous. And the reason that kind of gets to me about the Coca-Cola situation and the president and CEO of that organization is because as soon as those people began to die down after all that, the very next words out of his mouth were this: I just wonder what it would take. I know we just did 1 billion Coca-Colas yesterday, but I just wonder what it would take for us to be able to do 1 billion Coca-Colas this morning. Everybody sat there for a second and they went, and they started charging off. And every single Coca-Cola bottling company employee knows that right now they're on a challenge to make 1 billion Coca-Colas in a morning. In a half a day. It's dangerous to arrive at anything. The whole point was that company got more excited about what could be than they did about what was. You know, Jesus Christ understood the concept that if you want something you've never had, you got to do something you've never done. You ever thought about that before? If you want something you've never had, then you're going to have to do something you've never done before. You realize that our schools, our businesses, our marriages, our churches, we are perfectly designed to get the results that we're currently getting. And if we don't like the results that we're currently getting, then something's got to change. If you want something you've never had, you're going to have to do something you've never done. If you're happy with the results you're always getting, then keep on doing the same old thing. Now, I want to tell you something. In 1986, we started a basketball league back in South Carolina because we did not like the results that we were currently getting. In that first year, we had about 150 kids. The year after that, we had about 250 kids. After that, we had about 350 kids. Then we had 400. Then we had 450. And one year, we had 480 kids. Now, I'm just going to tell you, if you have a gym, much like what we just saw out there not long ago, that's a regular-sized gym where you can play 2 games at one time on the short courts right there, and you've got 480 kids, 1st through 6th grade, let me just tell you something. You are full. You're full. That's about all you can get in there. Unless somebody comes to you and says, you know what? I believe if we start playing on Friday night, we can actually get 520 kids in there. I said, you got to be kidding me. I said, okay, we'll give it a try. Well, the next year we opened up our registration. Now I'm going to tell you something. We had almost exactly 520 kids. And, man, we were full. And the year after that, people started coming up to me. I'm telling you what, people in our church, folks that I'd known for a long time, folks that had been playing upward for a long time. And it was exciting when basketball season started coming around. This one guy comes up to me and he begins to write out a check. He says, here, this is for my kids' upward basketball. I said, man, it's not for 3 months. He said, yeah, I know, I don't want to miss out. I said, you're not going to miss out, man. He said, no, I'm telling you, man, everybody's talking, they want to come play upward basketball. Here's my money. I said, look, whoa. I said, we're going to open up registration to everybody at the same time. Equal opportunity for everybody. I don't care if you're a member of this church. If you're not, I don't care if you're white, black, green, yellow, orange. Doesn't matter to me. We're going to go open up registration to everybody at the same time. No special favors for anybody. He said, all right, well, I'll be there then. I said, fine. He said, I'll come early. I said, you come early. Come on. Well, I'm not thinking any big deal about it, but I'm tell you what, registration gate came. I had my volunteers lined up. I was all ready to go. I walked out there, unlocked the doors, got ready. I looked out there. There's people lined up all the way around the building, come in to sign up for basketball. I'm telling you what, they started walking in. We were signing up left and right, bringing them in, bringing all this stuff. It was unbelievable. The next day, they were lined up. They came back, did the same thing. By the 3rd day, I'm going to tell you something. We had 520 kids, 27 kids on a waiting list. Now, I'm going to tell you something. I was kind of calm and cool about the whole thing. I kind of wrapped everything up, said goodbye to all my volunteers, let them go, locked up the doors, got ready to go home, and I said, woo, I have arrived. I said, man, this is going to be good. I couldn't hardly wait to get home, tell my wife what was going on. I mean, I walked in the door, threw open the front door. I said, baby, guess what? She said, what is it, honey? What is going on? I said, you're not going to believe this, baby. She said, what is it? I said, honey, guess what? She said, what? I said, honey, we got 520 kids, 27 kids on the waiting list. What you think about that, baby? She said, well, what about the 27 kids on the waiting list? I said, well, honey, what about the 520? She said, yeah, but what about the 27? I said, well, honey, what about the 520? And she said, well, honey, if that's what you wanted to do was put 27 kids on a waiting list, then you did good. I said, well, honey, I was really kind of thinking more about the 520. She said, what if one of those 27 would have been your daughter? I said, well, I'll sign her up early. We didn't talk about it a whole lot more that night, I can tell you. Can I tell you just a little bit of the state of our church and where we were at that moment? I'm going to tell you something. I was privileged to be on staff at an awesome church. We were moving and shaking and happening. I mean, things were good. I mean, our Sunday schools were full. Our choir was full. Our nurseries were full. The preschools were full. Everything was full. Man, it was great. I mean, I know who you are. You know who I am. I know where you sit. You know where I sit. But whatever you do, don't you sit where I sit, if you know what I mean. You know, now really, it wasn't quite that bad, but the point was you kind of knew everybody what was going on. And our minister of education, he kind of knew that we'd kind of plateauing out. We weren't growing in any area because we were so full. And he decided that he'd better bring somebody in to talk to our church about how we could go to the next level and not be about the past, but about where we needed to go. And so he decided to bring this guy in, a man by the name of Dr. Johnny Hunt. And Dr. Johnny Hunt was pastor of a church up in Greenville, South Carolina, up in North Carolina. And before too long, he got called to this church down in Woodstock, Georgia. And when he went down to this church in Woodstock, I just want to tell you, he went down there, and this church only had about 600 members of their church. And they had a little sanctuary that seated about 600 people, but only about 400 of them came. And most of the time, they didn't fill up very often. They said, we want you to come and be our pastor. He said, well, I tell you what, I'd love to come and be your pastor. He said, but if I'm going to come and be your pastor, you're going to have to go by my philosophy. And they said, well, now what would that be? They said, well, it's pretty simple. It goes like this. Whatever it takes. And they said, now what do you mean by that? And they said, well, if we got to go to 2 services, we'll go to 2. If we got to go to 3, we'll go to 3. And if we got to go to 4, we'll go to 4. And if we got to go to 2 Sunday schools, we'll go to 2. And if we got to go to 3, we'll go to 3. And if we got to go to 4, then we'll go to 4. Well, the personnel committee kind of got together, and they said, you know, we got this sanctuary, seats 600. We've never had more than 400 here. He says, I say we go with the philosophy. So they go back to him, and they said, Dr. Johnny, we're going to go with the philosophy. Whatever it takes, we're with you. He said, all right, I'm looking forward to coming. Well, I'm going to tell you, in a matter of months, they had to go to 2 services, then they had to go to 3, and then they had to go to 4. Then they had to go to 2 Sunday schools, and then they had to go to 3, and then they had to go to 4. And then he came back to him, he said, folks, it's time for us to do whatever it takes. Now, most of the people in there were thinking, now, what in the world does that mean? He said, I think we ought to sell this little place. We ought to go out there and buy us some land. We ought to build us a place where everybody who wants to come and hear about Jesus can come and hear about Jesus. And that's exactly what they did. And the very first building they built was their sanctuary that seated 3,500 people. And the day they moved in, they had to go to 2 services. Now, I'm going to tell you something. Just last year, they just finished their new sanctuary that seats 7,200 people. Now, I'm going to tell you something. These people are doing whatever it takes to reach lost people. Now, granted, Woodstock, Georgia is a growing metropolis, and people are moving there from all over the place, and I understand that. Apparently, to go to church. But this was the guy that was going to come and talk to us about how to grow our church. Now, I'm going to tell you something. Our pastor got us together. He said, I want every single staff person and their spouse. I want every Sunday school teacher and their spouse. I want every deacon and their spouse. And I want you all to come in here. We're going to listen to see what this guy has to say about how to grow our church. And I'm going to tell you something. There were quite a few of us that were sitting around that were thinking, who is this guy I think he is going to come in here and tell us how to grow our church? There were a few like that. Some. Like me. Some people were thinking, who is this guy? Well, I'm going to tell you something. He finally shows up. And we have this night where we have all this wonderful dinner and all these different kind of things. We're all gathered around and we're waiting to see what this guy says. And we have a little praise and worship music. And finally, this guy comes barreling in the door and he comes walking up, takes a drink of water. He'd been a little late getting there. And when he finally walks up, he says, I'm sorry for being late. He says, the truth of the matter is I haven't had time to look at your facilities. I've never been to this church before in my life. I have no idea what kind of programs that you have. But before we even get started here tonight, I've got to ask you a couple of questions. And can I share something with you? I want to ask you here tonight the exact same questions that he asked us that night. He said to us, why do you have a preschool ministry in your church? Why do you have a children's ministry in your church? Why do you have a youth ministry in your church? Why do you have a singles ministry in your church? Why do you have a choir in your church? For that matter, why is it that you have a pastor that stands up behind the pulpit and preaches from this word every Sunday at your church? Why do you do those things in your church? This is where you answer back. Why do you do those things in your church? No, really, this is where you answer back. Here we go. To reach lost people. Again, to reach lost people. Can I tell you something? We threw out a lot of great answers that night, but I'm going to tell you something. When somebody said to reach lost people, he stopped everything. He said, can I share something with you? Is there anybody here that can give me a better answer than what we just heard right here than to share the love of Jesus Christ with lost people? I'm ecstatic to tell you that we had the exact same response. He said, my friends, if that's the reason you're here and that's why you do what you do at your church, then you'll do whatever it takes to reach lost people. He said, if you so much as got a Sunday school class where people are walking in that door and they're coming in and there's no chairs around for them to sit and they turn back around, they walk out that door and get in their car and they leave, then you've turned away the opportunity to share Christ with that person. And I'm going to tell you something. He preached on that for the next 45 minutes. And everybody who was doubting or wondering or trying to think who this guy was, by the time he got done, was leaning on the end of their chair to find out what he was going to say next. And this is what he closed with. He said, my friends, I've never been to your church before. I have no idea what kind of programs you have, what kind of facilities you have, or what kind of people in your church that you have. But I'm going to tell you something. If you so much as got a gym in this church, and he pointed his finger, and my nose was right at the other end of his hand. He said, if you so much as got a gym in this church, and you're turning children away from playing basketball, and you might as well get you a yellow flashing sign, stick it in front of your gym door that says, go to hell, we're full. I want to share something with you. That moment changed my life. I never heard another word he said. I got up out of my seat and I ran to my car. Grabbed a hold of that steering wheel and began to weep. My wife, very well aware of the conversation that we just had, came out to the car, threw her arms around my neck, began to weep with me. And she did not say to me, this is not your fault. She did not say to me, there's nothing else you could do. She did not say to me, you can't worry about this. She said to me, what are you going to do? What are you going to do now? And I said, I'm going to do whatever it takes. I got up the next morning and I came to that church and I started looking all over the place for somewhere to put 2 basketball goals. I'm telling you, I went in the dining room. The ceilings are too short. I went into Sunday school classrooms. I mean, I walked into the sanctuary. I'm thinking, we take out these first 12 pews right here. It's going to be good. A little slope in the floor. We can work with that. Finally, I decided. I remembered our old youth room. And I went down to this old youth room. You had to go down several flights of steps. It's like this dungeon. It's not a wind in the whole place. You just got to go all the way down there. It was built in 1962. I think it was illegal to have a gym in a church back then, to go way down under. I got all the way down there and had this old nasty carpet, Skittles and Dr. Pepper all smeared in there, you know. And I went back there and I pulled back that carpet and I looked down and there it was, every recreator's dream, man, a maple floor. I thought, man, I'll tell you what, we could rip up this old carpet. We could put some of that new high rebound carpet they got in the elementary schools. Man, we could paint this whole place. We could put a goal up down here and a goal up down here. I'm telling you, we'll be able to do this thing. I mean, it's just a little bitty, tiny place. We could make this thing work. And I just got to tell you, it would have been so much fun if we could just make this thing work. I went to my youth minister. I said, hey, buddy, I got an idea. He said, what's that? I said, what do you think we go down there and we just pull up that old carpet. We put some of that new high rebound carpet down and we could paint the whole place. We put a goal up down here and a goal up down here. And if I could just have it Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, you can have it on Wednesday and Sunday. He said, Cass, I'm going to tell you something, buddy. That sounds good to me, but I don't have any money in my budget. I said, let's not worry about the money. Let me just see if it's all right with you. He said, yeah, that's good. I started getting all my costs together, getting everything together, making my plans. I'm thinking, okay, now what do I do? What do I got to do? And there's a man in my church who was a mentor of mine, a godly man. And I went and sat down with him, and I started to share with him the whole Johnny Hunt story. And before I could even get finished with that story, tears just began to run down his cheeks. He said, Cass, what are you going to do? And I said, I got this idea. I said, I want to go down to our old youth room, and I want to pull up that old carpet. I want to put some of that new high rebound carpet down. I want to paint the whole place up here. I want to put a goal up down here and a goal up down here. And I tell you what, if we could do that, we'll be able to reach another 200 kids. He said, well, how can I help you? I said, well, this is what I got to do. I got to go to the recreation committee, and then I got to go to the deacons, and then I got to go to the staff, and then I got to go to the church. I got to get this thing pushed through. He said, you got any idea what it's going to cost? I said, yes, sir, $11,576. He said, when do you need it? I said, 2 weeks. He said, Cass, it's a Baptist church. For those of you that are not Baptist, it ain't happening is what I'm telling you. I said, well, then what are we going to do? He stood up. He pulled out his checkbook. He wrote me a check for $11,576. He said, let's try it. Do you have any idea how fast you can go through 4 committees with a check in your hand? Right through there, buddy. I'm not kidding you. I'm telling you, in 2 weeks, I'm telling you, we'd pulled up that old carpet. We put some of that new high rebound carpet down there. We'd painted the whole place up there. We put a goal up down here and a goal up down here. We'd reopened our registration. Kids started signing up left and right. We had signed up another 200 kids. 27 of them played for free. Our church was so excited, they had no idea what was going on. I was scared to death, Because we were full again. I'm telling you something, you got to understand something. I've had an incredible privilege over the last several years of going around and telling the story to different places. I've had the privilege of walking into some of these churches. They've got an incredible CLC, a Christian Life Center, or an FLC, a Family Life Center, or a ROC, the Recreation Outreach Center, or the MAC, the Ministry Activity Center. Man, I'm going to tell you, we didn't have a CLC or an FLC or an MAC or an ROC. We had what we called a GYM. And I'm telling you what, all I could think about was where are we going to put more of these kids? And I got to thinking, you know what we could do is maybe walk up there to this new gym and, man, we'll knock out that wall right there. We'll put a whole nother gym down beside there. Maybe put one of them running tracks around the top like you've seen, a little weight room in there or something. Man, we might get us like a CLC. And I went and I called the architect. I said, hey, man, is this even possible? He said, Kaz, you're not going to believe this, but I'll go back and check it out. I think it might be. He came back about a week later, and he rolled out these plans. He said, Kaz, you're not going to believe it. It's going to be able to knock out that wall, be able to put a running track up there. You're going to be able to do all this kind of stuff. He said, you're only going to lose 35 parking spaces. This is great. I said, oh, man. I said, can I have this? He said, man, it's all yours. Man, I rolled up those plans. I tucked them up underneath my arm, and I went to go see my friend. You know the one I'm talking about. I walked in there and I shared with him, I said, my friend, you're not going to believe this. He said, what is it? I said, we have signed up another 200 kids. We are full. He said, you're kidding. I said, no, sir. He said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm glad you asked. Look here. I laid it out. I said, man, we're going to be able to knock out that wall. We're going to lose 35 parking spaces. We're going to be able to build this whole thing. We're going to be able to reach another 520 kids. We'll never grow out of that gym. He said, Kaz, you got any idea what that's going to cost? I said, yes, sir, about $2.3 million. Would you like to borrow my pen? He looked at me and he said, Kaz, you don't need another gym. You have no idea how I felt in that just brief moment, because I thought he'd lost his vision. But he said, Kaz, you don't need another gym. You need 1,000 gyms. He said, I want you to write the book, and I want you to share it with everybody you know that's got a passion for sharing the love of Jesus Christ with lost children and their families. You see, for him, it wasn't about all the things that had been done. It's about all the things that could possibly be done in the future. I had no idea how in the world we'd ever get to 1,000 gyms, but it didn't matter. I was going to go figure it out because there was a possibility that we could go get 1,000 gyms. And I just share something with you 8 years later. September 24th, gym number 1,000 came across our fax machine. I want to tell you, 3 years later, 2006, gym number 2,000 came across the fax machine. Actually, email by that time, internet, whatever it was coming next. But I want to share this with you. There's great danger in reaching a vision. It was about that time that we began to study some of the things that George Barna had revealed in his studies in that book entitled Transforming Children into Spiritual Champions. And in that book, he talked about the fact that there's 32 million children in this country between the ages of 5 and 12. And he talked about the fact that the vast majority of people that come to know Jesus Christ as their personal Savior come to know Jesus Christ as their personal Savior between the ages of 5 and 12. He says, as a matter of fact, 32% of all people that come to know Christ between the ages of 5 and 12. I'm interested to know, how many of you asked Jesus to come into your heart between the ages of 5 and 12? Raise your hand right now if you would. Keep your hands up. Exactly 32%. That's what I was thinking. Let me tell you the other thing he said. He said by the age 13, it is already set in the mind of a child, and they will take it all the way through their adult life, everything that they're going to believe about the Bible, everything that they're going to believe about God, and how that is going to affect them for the rest of their life. They've got it by the time they're 13 years old. That's where it's going to be. Can I share something with you? This was nothing more than proof of what Jesus Christ said in Mark chapter 4 when he began to talk about the sower and the seed. Because see, in his very first parable that he ever told, he talks about that sower that goes out there and he throws that seed and some of it falls on the hardened path. And he describes that that's when the birds come by and they ate it and took it away, that's Satan that just snatches it away. And other seed comes and it falls on the rocky soil and it sprouts up really quickly and it looks like it's really good, but the first sign of sunshine comes along and it really starts to wither it out and it dies. And he compares that to a Christian that has no roots. And when he asked Jesus to come into his heart and all of a sudden it's the first sign of problems, it just withers up because there's no depth to his relationship. But the last two are the ones that are so amazing to me. It's the thorny soil and the good soil. That's the ones that are so amazing to me because both of these seeds that fall on the good soil and the thorny soil, you see the thorny soil, he says the seeds were thrown among the thorns. That means the thorns were already there. And the seed was thrown among the good soil. And they both grew up and be exactly the same. And they're looking exactly like they got these tree trunks and these beautiful branches and these big leaves. And they start coming out and it's just about time to produce fruit. And over here, this good soil is producing fruit left and right, 30, 60, 90, 100-fold. And fruit of the Spirit is peace, love, joy, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, self-control, and they're sharing the love of Jesus Christ with other people. But over here on this thorny soil, the seeds, they come up and they turn into this tree that looks just like the other one. But all the time, these thorns are growing up around it. And just as it's about time to produce fruit, it comes in and it chokes it out. And you've got this beautiful tree with no fruit. And then the Bible goes on and Jesus tells us exactly what those thorns are. He says the thorns are the worries of this world, the deceitfulness of wealth, and the desires for other things. And you know what's so amazing about that is that those three things that he calls thorns are things that none of us are born with. They're things that are learned as we live in this world, which is to say that we have to share the love of Jesus Christ with people before the thorns come in. Well, when do those things start to come in? George Barna says it happens by the time they're 13 years old. We only have a short period of time to share the love of Jesus Christ with these kids. As a matter of fact, one of the things that George Barna says is that it's a race to the heart of a child, and the first one who gets there wins. It's a race to the heart of a child, and the first one to get there wins.